Hey guys, welcome back to Rabbit Hole Stories. And today we have kind of like a sad story that eventually turns into something great, Ian. And we had Rick on from Scotland who was telling us how he basically was or how he was stolen 25 Bitcoin from his wallet, or his and his dad's wallet. So it's a heartbreaking one, but we had a lot of good anecdotes and stories in there.
Yeah, whenever I hear I lost 25 Bitcoin, I just cringe. The pain of it, oh my God. But yeah, it's a cautionary tale for sure. But in it, there's a lot of education, understanding, security, and reflection. And it's a great episode. I really loved it. And let's go straight in and speak to Rick and stay curious, guys.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode here at Rabbit Hole Stories. And today we're going to talk about some pain. We're going to talk about maybe losing some of your Bitcoin and how to deal with it, what to do with it. And obviously, we have a new and exciting guest. And this is Rick, who's coming in from Scotland. Rick, how has your day been so far?
Yeah, pretty good. I was doing a little bit of joinery this afternoon, so yeah, that's a good way to calm your mind. Actually, is to work with some woodwork with your hands. It helps.
Mate, that sounds amazing. Like I did, oh, I had an intention of being a carpenter once, and it was I was a labourer in a building site for a while, and I was always amazed by the sort of like this carpenter who's on site. He was passionate about what he did, right? And he's doing dovetail joints and things like that, and all the other carpenters were taking the piss out of him because they were like, just do this, put that screw there. He was like, no, I really care about what I do, and he was really meticulous about it. And he said to me as well at the time, it was like, mindfulness and the skill that he respects. So is that just a hobby for you then? Is it?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the funny thing, right? Back when we still had our Bitcoin, one of the things everyone talks about is Bitcoin kind of stores your time and gives it back to you, right? And
Right.
that's what Bitcoin had done for me. So, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, like run various companies and stuff. And honestly, I just thought we had a business that unfortunately got completely destroyed by COVID, and I thought, do you know what? Do you know what? I've been trapped in my house for too long. Everyone has the same story. And my solution to this was actually, I'm pretty confident my Bitcoin stack is good. I'm gonna take some of that time back now. I'd been hodling for 10 years, not spending any Bitcoin. I thought it's time for a treat. That was a tough couple of years. So off I went for a woodworking course. Because I get a little bit weird and obsessive about things. So I really wanted to make the most high-end furniture with these, complicated Japanese joinery with no glue. And
Right. Yes.
yeah, 20,000 hours of YouTube videos about woodworking later. I'd gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. I'd now found the woodworking rabbit hole. Um, so yeah, I mean, it sounds like some sort of crazy early retirement, but I did also have ambitions to maybe sell some of it, and I did have an idea for a name of the business. It was going to be Proof of Woodwork. Oh, it was going to be
Oh wow.
nice.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and it was going to give, I was going to sell stuff like tables for SATs. Um, but now, I mean, yeah, my skills are still pretty rough. So yeah, gonna take a left turn back into my more into my background, like marketing, sales, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's the woodworking. Yeah.
Do you know what? Loads of things have popped up in my mind as topics here. One is time preference, right? How having value gives you more sort of it adjusts your time preference where you can sort of think about different things and come up with different incentives and things like that, and not be on this constant rat race because of the constant devaluation of money. Also, proof of work comes up for me in that as well, and value for value, right? And this sort of like precision that you're sort of trying to perfect your skill base and all that sort of stuff. So I can, as a Bitcoiner, through a Bitcoiner lens, when people start talking to me about everyday things, I start to sort of like see things through this different perspective. And I don't know, it seems like from what you were saying, 10 years you were holding Bitcoin, and I don't know whether in that 10 years your mindset has changed in any way, and if so, what has that been like for you as a journey?
Absolutely. Like, I mean, Bitcoin changes you absolutely, right? I can tell you after a decade, yeah, it's a total, it's hard to even sort of describe it sometimes, but I'll take the woodwork as an example. I just found this huge passion for things that were handmade with skill, rather than you go buy some IKEA furniture, it does the job, it's nice and cheap, it arrives in the post the next day, but it's crap, it's balsa wood covered with some crappy veneer, right? And it falls apart, and there's no joy in it, and there's no artistry in it, and there's no real beauty in it. And oh man, I mean, my missus, right? She's into yoga. And I can't remember the name of these things, but I was going to make her like a big giant hexagon in the garden, and aim it at the sun so she could, at a certain time of day do a downward
Right.
dog or whatever it is she does. And just, yeah, like, and spend forever on it. Like, if it takes me 2 years to build this, but it's going to be epic. So yeah, I think we might have the same mindset on that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think this is a common thing along the Bitcoin community as a whole. We do tend to focus a lot on stuff we're interested in. I would say a critic point is we sometimes also tend to, ignore certain things. Like, for example, this whole ETF thing. I've read countless articles which were factually just wrong, how they explained how ETFs work. So, and I know it's like TradFi and they're the bad guys and things, but, sometimes you have these, we're a bit too hyper, I guess. But what you describe, I think, is something a lot of people have. But without going too far down the woodworking rabbit hole, what is your actual Bitcoin rabbit hole, Rick? How did you discover it, and why did you stay around?
Well, I mean, through, like most people, it's a combination of luck well, I say luck, it all stems with my dad, really. So ever since I was, 5 feet tall, he was drilling it into me that the central banks are a total scam, that fractional reserve banking is the biggest crime ever perpetuated on humanity. He explained the whole thing, and this is pre-Bitcoin, right? So he was well aware of all this bullshit. And the other thing is, he's also a developer. So he's been a developer for 50 odd years. He started with 360 assembler, and he still makes stuff now with like Node.js and Docker. Like, he's a very capable guy. And then I went off to uni and did a bit of economics inside of a business degree and stuff. And all of that sort of coalesced into Bitcoin, just kind of landed right in our Venn diagram of random interests. And that's pure chance. And pure chance that he stumbled across it. But man, my dad's a funny guy, right? He's involved in some weird forums, and like, he's that kind of guy. So he stumbles across this thing, and then oh man, the next few months are just a whirlwind. Like, I had a normal job out of uni, but every night coming home, spending hours on the phone with him, just talking about Bitcoin, like, just holy shit, this thing's mental. In fact, most of the time we were trying to figure out how it must be total nonsense. Like, you can't just put money on the internet. There has to be some fatal flaw in it, or some scam that we haven't seen. And the longer we tried to, I guess, break it or figure out why it couldn't work, we just never came up with a credible answer. So it didn't take us long to start buying it and messing around with it and getting excited by it, really.
That's what the rabbit hole's all about, right? You first meet it with a little bit of skepticism, or this is too good to be true, or
Yeah.
Satoshi Nakamoto just like released it, and like there's no sort of like self-interest as such in his sort of discovery of it, as some people call it. And once you sort of really sort of look into it and dip your head in a little bit more and sort of like investigate, that's when all these things start to open up, right? Like, okay, I'm just going to constantly try and sort of initially, for me, I can only speak personally, try to sort of find that scam in it that I think that might be, or start questioning the things that, like, I hear that's bad for the environment, and then you start looking into that sort of avenue. You start to hear all these different things, and you're just constantly questioning it, right? And what was that kind of click moment for you? What was the light bulb moment for you that was like, actually, now I understand that it's something special?
I mean, the funny thing is, I don't know if I would say there was ever one big penny drop moment. It was more like a series of penny drops, some bigger than the others. I mean, like most people, our understanding developed, along the journey. We really benefited from the fact that Bitcoin was the only game in town for a while. So,
Mm.
we didn't get distracted with all the altcoins and the nonsense because we were figuring out Bitcoin before, say, even Ethereum showed up. Um, the funny story about that is we never ended up shitcoining because we understood Bitcoin well enough before the shitcoins came along that when we saw, like, well, hang on a minute, Vitalik is raising money for this, and he's like a central figure. Like, this isn't the same. I don't know what that is. This whole world computer thing. I thought, well, maybe he's figured out some other crazy thing that I'm yet to understand, but I intimately just didn't trust it sort of straight away. So yeah, I guess, and the foundation of not trusting central banks and my dad's sort of understanding of that, it meant that we were hungry for a solution, and that hunger made you just go, oh, could it be true? Could it be true? And the more you play with it, the more you read about it, the better you understand it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got a bit of a cautionary tale to tell us. And when I first heard about your story, I was gutted. I was like, okay. And what it did do is really sort of incentivize me just to sort of double check. And it was a reminder to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people as well, to sort of really secure your wealth. And I'm sure that's what your intention was. And somehow that didn't happen. I'm just quite curious as to how that all evolved for you.
I mean, the the worst thing about this story is that with my dad being a developer, and I'm not really a slouch with technology. I'm no developer, right? And I'm not a galaxy brain Bitcoiner like some of the people around, but we know better. So I'll sort of take you through the story from top to bottom of how the whole thing transpired. So way back when, the only place you could really get Bitcoin was Mount Gox. So that's where we went, and that's where we bought our coins. But luckily enough, we'd done enough homework to understand that the whole point, well, to us, the whole point of Bitcoin is that it's peer-to-peer, right? So using MTGOX to store the coins just seemed like, well, this is just a bank, really. So, that having understood Bitcoin, it made perfect sense to us back then that you would look after it yourself. So that's what we did. That, by the way, is what I would tell your listeners is like, okay, I lost the Bitcoin after 10 years, or there was a hack and it was stolen from us. But don't forget that we did hold it for 10 years. The only reason that we made it 10 years was because we held it ourselves. In that 10-year period, we saw Mount Gox blow up. Everyone knows about FTX and Celsius and Voyager. And I mean, the list genuinely is way longer than I think people realize of these centralized services that went pop. I mean, I've forgotten most of them. So that's an important point. So we took our coins, we looked after them ourselves, and we managed to keep hold of them for 10 years. The funny, well, I say funny, it's more tragic part of the story is that just back in November, me and my dad went off to the Adopting Bitcoin conference over in El Salvador, right? Because like most Bitcoiners, I mean, 10 years we've been talking about what would the world look like on a Bitcoin standard. And now, here we go. We can go and have a live look for ourselves. It's been a couple of years. Let's see what's going on in El Salvador. So, and it's a bit celebratory as well, like father son, shared passion, trip of a lifetime, never been to Central America. I mean, it was going to be awesome, right? I mean, especially, the opportunity to travel with your dad while he's still like fit and healthy and can get about. These are, you're trying to make these memories, right? So off, so off we go to El Salvador. We went to the conference for 3 days, and me and my dad are actually, we've been kicking around a Bitcoin Lightning app that we've been playing with for a few years. We've been talking about it, but we've been building it recently. So we come back from the conference on the third day, and we're buzzing, right? Because of all the talks and all this. And so we want to get straight back onto working on the app in our little Airbnb. At which point, my dad opens his laptop because he wants to fund a Lightning channel, right, for something that we want to test. And yeah, I mean, that's when the rabbit hole, there we go, just a little pun for you, but there's where the rabbit hole just opened wide and sucked us down into it. I mean, so I look over at my dad, he says just one word, he just said, fuck. And I said, you know, what? I think he might like stubbed his toe or like something stupid. And then he says, I've been hacked. And just, I can't really describe, yeah, the next few moments. It's like pure adrenaline, cortisol. Uh, kind of feels almost like you've had an enormous dose of caffeine. You're not fully in control of yourself. You're shaking a bit and stuff like that. Okay, so then, you know, we start bargaining with ourselves. My dad's recently changed laptops and stuff like that, and he remembers that he moved some files around, reorganized some stuff. So hang on. Are we looking at the right wallets, right? Because they're reading 0. There's no Bitcoin there, when there should have been 25, which is, you know, today like $1 million worth. I mean, who gives a shit about dollar value, right? But to put it in to give it some sort of scale for people. Yeah, so then we start the bargaining and we're like, oh, you know, it must be somewhere else. It must be somewhere else. At which point my brain has slowed down sufficiently for me to go, hang on, send me the transaction IDs of this Bitcoin moving, right? Which he fires over to me, and then I'm on mempool space. And that's when the hammer blow comes down, because I'm seeing all these transactions for various amounts of Bitcoin, and then it just sprays and, you know, gets chopped up and sprayed everywhere. And that's when you know, oh, holy shit, that's definitely not us. And we definitely don't control that Bitcoin anymore. So that was the sort of discovery story. Yeah, and then we're in El Salvador for, you know, the remainder of the trip, like another 10 days. You know, and we're trying to, wow. Oh, then I tweet about it, right? And like, this is the funny thing is like, I'm not really like an influencer, social media type guy. That seems to have abruptly changed, but there we go. So, you know, I put it out on Twitter, not really sure. I don't know why I did it, to be honest, but that went crazy. So that post goes viral, and my phone is just overheating with all the notifications, and that's, oh man, yeah, like I don't know how to describe it. One day you've lost all your money. The next day you're going viral on Twitter, and it was intense, really intense. Especially for two Irish guys sitting in a jungle at 42-degree heat. Like, we're not built for that. So yeah, it was pretty wild.
Where to start is now the question, because I think looking from it or hearing from it from the outside, Rick, it sounds like you mainly had it on a desktop native wallet, so like Electrum or a Sparrow or whatever. And did you actually secure it with like anything close to like a multi-sig setup, or if you want to disclose obviously the information?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the Bitcoin's gone now, right? So we may as well talk about it. So look, basically it wasn't multi-sig. And I mean, we would use hardware wallets whenever we wanted to send transactions and stuff like that, which, by the way, is a sensible move. But, you know, as everyone knows, you need to store your recovery seeds, right? Now, the way we stored our recovery seeds was in a password manager. Now, the password manager was not like a centralized service like LastPass. It was like an open source self-hosted version. And the one we used is called KeePass. And KeePass is like really well respected open source software. There's, you know, I should be clear, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that software. It's a great product. But we decided to store our seeds inside a KeePass file. Now, the KeePass file was encrypted with a password that only existed in mine and my dad's brains, right? So not written down anywhere, you know, wouldn't speak it out loud, that sort of thing. And crucially, also, it's one thing storing your seeds in an encrypted KeyPass file. You've then obviously we went on to the next step, which is, well, we need to back this up because if the computer gets corrupted or whatever. Enter mistake number two, which is, we backed that up to the cloud, right? Thinking, incorrectly, well, the file's encrypted. So if the cloud gets compromised, an encrypted file should be hard to break. We should be fine. I mean, it's at this point it's worth mentioning there's a few mistakes sitting in this setup that people should be aware of. Like, number one, keeping your seed on a daily driver laptop or any device that ever connects to the internet is a really, really bad idea. Like, even if you're going to encrypt it and all this sort of stuff, I mean, look, I know there's guys out there that are like turbo good at security and keep their seeds on their phone. Like, I've heard of that, believe it or not. And I'm sure those capable people can explore those options. But for the rest of us mere mortals, do not put your seed on a device that ever connects to the internet, and even worse, on a daily driver laptop, right? The second big mistake is keeping it backed up to the cloud, because all of a sudden you've taken this peer-to-peer money and you've essentially put the keys with a centralized service. The irony of that ridiculous decision is not lost on us. So this begs the question, though. All right, so how the hell did they get in? How did they get the seed? How did they get into the encrypted file? So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're working on best theories more than absolute certainty on this sort of stuff. But, we've been working with the police and a few other agencies that are trying to help us figure all this out. And what we learned in that was that, number one, our KYC details were obtained during the Mt. Gox hack back in, I want to say, was that 2014? Something like that. But, a long time ago, Mt. Gox got hacked. And I mean, the funny thing is, at the time, we're thinking, well, great, because we never stored our coins there. But it never really crossed our minds that, yeah, but they've got all our customer information, which will have been gobbled up in this hack as well. So, again, I can't prove this, but what we know is that they knew our names, they knew our wallet addresses that we withdrew the Bitcoin to. They also knew the amounts of Bitcoin that we'd been buying at Mt. Gox. And, eventually we will have done UTXO management, so we will have put some other Bitcoin together with it and stuff like this. So chances are they had our name, which is quite a unique name. My second name's Messitt, right? There's not many Messitts about. And my dad's email address as well that would have secured his OneDrive account. He's a developer who's like active, and chats to people and this sort of thing. And it wouldn't have been overly difficult to find out his full name and then work out his email address. So at this point, I guess what we learned from this is that KYC is a problem. If your details get out there, it's fairly easy to track people on chain and then figure out how much they've got and this sort of thing. And there are people capable of doing that. We think this KYC led them to target us specifically. I can't prove that, but the alternative story would have to be that this hacker just won the lottery and got into, 25 Bitcoin on pure chance. I don't know if I think that's that plausible, but who knows? So, all right, let's get to how the hell did they get into the OneDrive account and subsequently into the KeyPass file? Well, and this is the thing we'll kick ourselves forever about, is that those passwords were just nowhere near strong enough. We're talking like 11 characters, no special characters, which is crazy. And I don't know a lot about entropy, but I've typed that password into entropy calculators and they're telling me like it's 30 bits of entropy, which is laughably low, right? So my current leading theory is it's quite likely that I think they brute forced their way in through both passwords. Again, I'm no expert in this, but through a bit of Googling, from what I can gather, there are people who might be able to hack this in hours, if not weeks or months. So for the kind of money on offer, I guess it was worth it.
Rick, I just tried to put myself in your shoes and your dad when that moment of realization first hit you. Right, you just sort of that shock, that sort of like everything must have been in slow motion, and then when the realization started to kick in, that must have been difficult, and it certainly ruined, no doubt, your trip to adopting Bitcoin and all that sort of stuff. And I guess when you were saying that you've never been on social media much and you've never really sort of been that social in that regard, I guess now that you are more prominent in that regard, that it's I'm hesitating to say it's a silver lining, in the sense that you bring into the space the cautionary tale, right? You're the person that can now sort of help us to truly understand how important it is that we need to look after our Bitcoin. And you seem to have been very knowledgeable. You still are at protecting those things, and despite that still happens. So it causes people to sort of just double check if everything's in order, listen to what it is that you've just said, and how you've explained it, and to sort of like take action, I suppose. And I don't know if that is a right perception of mine, or you see it differently.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I'll make no bones about it. Like that was a significant financial blow. So, I'm actively looking to, restart my career and stuff, because I love the woodworking, right? But like, you couldn't have me come to your house and fit a door. So that's not that's not an immediate path to some work. So, and hey, straight up, I'd love nothing more than to work in the Bitcoin space. It's been my ultimate obsession for a whole decade. And hey, look, I'll go back into the fiat mines if I must. But do you know what occurred to me with all this happening is it's crazy, man. Like we knew better. We know about steel plates. We know all the options there. We just really got complacent. And there's this weird thing about like, well, it's been okay for 10 years, so you just it's hard, yeah, it sounds really dumb, but you just get comfortable. Kind of, yeah, it won't happen to me. I mean, the frustrating thing is you wouldn't believe how many people I've taught to get a hardware wallet and stamp their seed on metal, and I'm telling everyone else to do it and not doing it myself. If me and my dad had even had one conversation about it in that time, and got in and gone, well, what is the password to that? We would have said, whoa, holy, because it's worth so much now. Holy shit, we need to upgrade this. So yeah, so what I'm doing now is, hey, look, every man and his dog is making price predictions, trading groups, talking about God candles, and we're watching charts, and everyone loves the macroeconomics, right? And I'm not dissing the macroeconomics of Bitcoin because it's fascinating. But one mistake that I made is I was spending way too long thinking about what the world might look in year 2100 living on a Bitcoin standard. And what I should have been doing is working on my OPSEC, improving my skills, and going deeper and deeper into the things that matter most. And that is, if you want to be your own bank, it's coming with a shitload of responsibility. And you can listen to every macro podcast in the world and pontificate about what these ETFs mean, or whatever. But listen, if you can't hold on to this stuff, you're in big trouble. And and it's so much more than a hardware wallet and a steel plate, is what I've learned, because, our KYC details getting leaked. That's a problem. So, I need to find non-KYC ways to buy corn. If I buy corn, then I need to find, I need to be adept at mixing it and using coin joins so I can at least break the trail of what I've been doing. I need to be looking at multi-sig setups. I need to be thinking about inheritance. What happens if I get hit by a bus? I need to be doing my coin control and UTXO management and all of this. I may need to think about making a honeypot in case anyone comes after me with a physical attack. And I go to a lot of meetups, I speak to a lot of Bitcoiners, and I'm telling you, like 90% of people just, they're not going far enough. You're not going deep enough. Like, hardware wallet and steel is not enough. You're not sovereign at that point. You need to get your node. You need to do all this other stuff as well. Um, so it was a sharp wake up call that I hadn't done enough work. And I'm, well, now I'm going to get on with the work and just kind of just tell people what I'm up to, you know, what I did, what the remedies are going to be, and hopefully wake a few people up before they feel, until they feel, you know, because trust me, those big green dildos really, really sore after you've lost your Bitcoin. So best avoided.
Oh, God.
And I guess this proves a point which I think a lot of the Bitcoin community actually forgets about. And, you know, we always, this is a personal belief now. I think a lot of Bitcoiners believe they're clever, they're much more clever than they really are. And they think so high of themselves because, you know, it's a circle jerk. We all tell each other that we're amazing. We all realized how, like, fucked up the system is and all of these things. But then at the end of the day, we actually don't take their own words. And in full-on transparency, I have lost Bitcoin as well because I've trusted people. You know, I've trusted them, not really with like my seeds or anything, but in a similar fashion to you, Rick, where I basically deposited a wallet. It was a hardware wallet somewhere where people also had access to, and it didn't really take long for them to, you know, find out the initial passphrase to that wallet and use those Bitcoin. Luckily,
someone you knew.
I was able to. So someone knew. So they basically, I was stupid enough to believe that it's safe enough in an undisclosed location, and just some people knew about it. And I didn't go that extra step, but that's a valuable teaching lesson. Luckily, I was able to retract some of the Bitcoin back, so I wasn't completely lost. But, you know, these are the things which, like you said, you never ever think about these things. You never sit there and go like, I don't know, is this person going to fuck me over? Is our KYC data actually going to lead back to my dad to then lead back to this file? And, you know, all of these little things. Once you, I think, go through this, it's the same like if you send Bitcoin to the wrong address. If you do that once, you'll never do it again. And now you have, unfortunately, paid the price for it. Or who knows, maybe the hacker is a watcher of the show and he'll return 25 Bitcoin, but I'll doubt it for now.
I very much doubt that. Yeah, it's a painful lesson, but you know, I think most people, I do worry. If I'm honest, I worry. I think based on my interactions with people, I'd say the vast majority of Bitcoiners aren't set up as good as they could be, or could go deeper. And I just want to reiterate that point. Like, if you want sovereign money, you want to be a bank. Well, yeah, you got to be a bank, right? And you got to take on all that work that goes with it. Yeah, you know, the other thought I have is like, I really want to, you know, the reason my dad got into this at all was like, we're here to end the Federal Reserve. Like, we are really sick to the back teeth. Like, we hated it before Bitcoin, we still hate it now, and that's why we were Bitcoiners. And when I sit back and think about it, I think, damn, we're onboarding a lot of people, and a lot of people are holding Bitcoin, and that's great. But if we're in a war against this fiat machine, and you know, all of us plebs are the foot soldiers, man, if you want to win a war, you got to make sure that your infantry is like well trained and well equipped, and they know what they're doing. Because at the moment, it kind of feels like, and I was one of them, by the way. I'm a 7-year-old running around with a bazooka, and it's not going to take long before I blow my own head off. So, you know, how do we get to a place where, you know, we're making more content to take people down these pathways? I mean, it's tricky, right? Because you'll see, let's take coin joins, for example, right? You know, you think, right, I want to get into that. And then you see this huge war between Wasabi and the guys at Samurai. And you've got to, as someone who's not a cryptographer or a developer or anything like that, you're thinking, how do I pass this? How do I process where I think the sort of truth lies? So, but even saying that, you know, I think we could do more to help other people. And you know, I'm not the one to teach people this, right? I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I'm hoping I can rattle a few cages and make a few people think, do you know what, this is worth it. I'm going to spend an hour a week, 2 hours a week, whatever it is. Just like, I don't know, take a course, sign up to something, go and hire an expert because man, like if I want to, I like golf. If I want to improve my golf, I go and hire a coach and he teaches me golf. If I want to learn woodworking, guess what? Like I make a total mess when I'm on my own. If I'm stood next to a guy who knows what he's doing, he directs me down the right path. So maybe you're a super shadowy super coder, as private as Satoshi already. Or maybe if you've made some money and your stack is worth a little bit, invest some in keeping hold of it. Go and get some training. Go and find some sensei who can, yeah, get you further down that pathway.
A couple of things come to mind, Rick, when I'm listening to you speak. Is I'm reflecting upon the ecosystem you like, or Bitcoiners as a whole, and particularly if you look on X and other social networks, whatever, Nostr and things. There's a lot of big egos out there, and I think some people lose sight of the hard work that needs to be done. And I'm wondering whether you've got any kind of thoughts or feelings about that, and whether or not we need to do something better, different. Do we need to have more organization or serious conversations? Do we need to stop fucking jerking each other off or getting into these petty little arguments online and disagreements? Is there any sort of thoughts that you've had about what we could do better as a community or an ecosystem?
Well, I don't want to be misunderstood either on the conflicts between sort of Wasabi and Samurai, because I think that's just an inevitable part of this bleeding edge technology creative process, right? That has to happen. And unless these guys fight it out, we won't get the solutions. And I think when you find those arguments, sometimes you just realize you're out of your depth, but give it time and answers will flush through that process, and someone smarter than me will put that into layman's terms and I can understand it. I don't know, man. I mean, I kind of think like, what is it that makes people take action? I think you got to make it cool. I think you got to make it cool to be a self-sovereign, badass, unfuckwithable person. Like hackers can't get me, the government can't get me. Like if you want it, come and fucking get it. Like because we do a lot of talk about, well, like you said, right? Everyone's getting these big egos because they were first and they understood it before the rest of the world, right? I get that, right? But what if we kind of cutely said, listen, you want to be a real Bitcoiner, unless you're running a node and this and that and the other, yeah, you've not really made it. You're still a pre-coiner, right? Because until you've secured your Bitcoin, you're not a Bitcoiner because you've got some, but you very quickly might not have some. It's tough, man. It's not, you know what it is? It's a societal thing as well, right? Like I could go and watch a podcast about macroeconomics or someone telling me that Bitcoin's going to 250K next week. And to engage with that content, I can be completely passive, right? And just sit there sucking down the hopium and having a nice old time. If I go down this self-custody rabbit hole, all of a sudden it requires me to be active and put in that effort. And, we kind of live in a world where consuming is the default. If I had the answer to change that, man, I would love to share it with the world. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe scary stories like mine is the way to say, hey, look, you're sitting on 5 Bitcoin and you can't wait to buy a yacht. Well, listen, you'll struggle to buy a paddling pool unless you get this right. So sort it out.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And if anyone's listening, take this as a cautionary tale, and I hope you've learnt something. And obviously look into your own sort of security and know that it's no joke, right? And even if you've got 0.0 whatever Bitcoin, the value is there, and it's gonna grow in terms of fiat value, which I suppose is irrelevant, but it's no joke. And I'm sure, where are you on socials, and can people sort of get that sort of content online, and is there any sort of
so I'm mainly just active on
that you can
oh
sorry
Ian, you're a bit quiet, so I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, not at all.
Yeah, on socials, I'm just at R Messitt. Um, if you type in MESSITT, you'll find me. And yeah, at the moment, like I'm doing a little bit of writing and work for the Bitcoin Way. Um, I want to give them a shout out actually, just because those guys are like cybersecurity experts. And as soon as the hack happened, Tony was on the phone to me within, I don't know, about 12 hours. As soon as he heard, he gave us a call, and he was helping us trying to like figure it out and work our way through it and understand what happened. And we were very grateful for that. And hey, look, one of the things I spoke about today is, unless you're a cybersecurity expert now, you can actually go to companies like the Bitcoin Way and pay them to train you. And they don't want to, you can sign up without giving them your email address. You can use a fake email. You can be totally a non when you speak to them. They don't want to know how much Bitcoin you've got. But what they do want to do is just take you on a step-by-step journey to understanding this stuff, getting your own node set up and all this stuff. And look, you could spend, I mean, some people are going to want to spend hundreds of hours on YouTube figuring it out, but you might always be left not 100% sure if you've gone about it the right way. If you're sitting on a lot of Bitcoin, you should really consider this, because, you want to get it secure before you become fabulously wealthy, right? And also, actually, look, on this point, I got to thank so many people as well that have sort of been so supportive. The Bitcoin community is really unbelievable. So the guys at Samurai Wallet, their research arm, got out in touch with us very quickly, and man, they're sending me graphs tracking where all this Bitcoin went and how it's been mixed and flipped here and all this stuff. And oh man, without that support, we'd have just been adrift, lost, confused, and in more pain. And I got to shout those guys out, and so many other people on Twitter. There's most of them are anon. I have no idea who they were, but if you got in touch, like, I can't express how appreciative we are. And even when I got back to the UK and started working with the police, they want reports. What happened? Well, the fact that this army of gigabrains had come to our aid and tried to tell us the story meant that process was way less painful. So it's another reason I'm here, man. Like, it's pretty embarrassing for me to talk about how we stored our seeds and how we got wrecked. But the Bitcoin community was so good to us that if I can save a few other plebs, it's just the right thing to do, man. So yeah.
Yeah, and shout out to the Bitcoin Way. We had Tony on our show recently, and I think we're going to put the link in the show notes now. I've mentioned it, and Tony was great at articulating what it is they do at the Bitcoin Way, and he works with like Andy and Ahmed, and they've got a great team there, and obviously they can walk you through all these elements that we've been discussing today. And thank you for your time, Rick. But before we round up our show, we like to do the All Roads Lead Back to Bitcoin challenge, where we ask our guests to see if they can link a word and or phrase back to Bitcoin somehow. And the word that Joel and I come up with today was wood chopper. How does wood chopper relate back to Bitcoin?
Oh, wood chopper. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I guess there's some sort of link from chopping wood to proof of work. Have you ever heard? There's an old Chinese proverb that I really like, actually, and it says, "The man who chops the wood warms himself twice." So, I guess the meaning behind the proverb is, the work that he does when he's chopping the wood for his fire also warms him up. So through the work he puts in, he gets some benefit. So wood chopping, proof of work. That's the best I got.
I love it. That's perfect. And again, thank you for your finite time. And again, to all our listeners, thank you as well. And stay curious.